Hi y'all, welcome and welcome back to this video on applying Aristotle's golden mean. In this video, we move from understanding Aristotle's theory of virtue to applying it in practice. Aristotle believed that moral virtue is a matter of balance, avoiding both excess and deficiency in thought, emotion, and behavior. This balanced state is known as the golden mean. Virtue is a habit of character that helps us act rightly at the right time, toward the right people, for the right reasons, and in the right way. The doctrine of the mean, also known as Aristotle's golden mean, teaches that moral virtue lies between excess and deficiency. Virtue is excellence, not compromise. The mean is relative to us and found through reason and experience. For example, courage lies between rashness and cowardice. The golden mean in practice. The golden mean helps us respond rightly to specific situations. Each virtue reflects balance and requires practice, awareness, and emotional control. Moral excellence depends on our ability to discern and act according to reason. So this chart is an overview showing Aristotle's golden mean. In the left column, you see the sort of situation that you're talking about. And then after the hyphen, you'll see the three different sort of options that you have in that situation. You'll see one that is going to be excess. You'll see one in the middle, that's the virtuous action. And then you'll see the one on the right, and that's going to be the action that involves deficiency. So this is the full chart. We'll break it down a little bit more here in just a minute. Okay, so here we have the process that we're going to use to apply the golden mean. So in this process for moral decision making, step 1, we're going to identify all the possible actions that we can take in a specific situation. In step 2, we're going to determine which of those possible actions align with virtue. Which of those actions are consistent with virtue? Which of those actions are inconsistent with virtue? So which of those actions are going to be vices? Which of those actions are not going to be that middle way? Then the last step, step 3, is we use practical wisdom to choose the right action to take. So this process is supposed to help us to act in a way that's consistent with our moral character. Okay, so back to our chart that shows some examples. These examples show how Aristotle's golden mean works as a balance between excess and deficiency. So you see that each virtue represents excellence, not mediocrity, in the way that we respond to life's situations. So if we look at this top one that's in a situation where you're facing danger, you see that courage is not the absence of fear, but it's finding the right amount of fear and confidence for the situation. If you're going to go with the vice of excess, that means that you're being rash. That means that you're not taking into account the right amount of fear that's appropriate to feel in that situation. You have too much confidence. If you look at the other end of that spectrum and you see the vice of deficiency, in that instance, there's too much fear and not enough confidence for the situation. But if you look at the virtuous act, that golden mean, courage is having the right amount of fear in the situation and having the right amount of confidence in the situation. And this is something that I remember from watching Game of Thrones, is that courage is not a lack of fear. Being brave is being able to face a situation even if you feel fear. And that's what you see here. You see that balance of fear and the balance of confidence. And that balance in the middle is courage. That's the golden mean in that situation. Now we have the second set of examples. And in this second set of examples, we kind of see more issues where we're looking at social and emotional life. So you're finding that balance in those areas of your life, from like friendship and humor to judgment and affection. The virtuous mean or midpoint is going to depend on who we are, the role that we play in the situation, and the situation. Aristotle reminds us that virtue is always relative to the person and to the context. And so this shows us a way that virtue ethics differs from deontology and Kantian ethics, which we studied before. Remember with Kant, with the categorical imperative, it's an absolute non-negotiable moral rule that applies the same in all situations despite the circumstances. But with virtue ethics, it depends on the circumstances, who we are, what our role is, what's the context. Virtue ethics are going to be very very situationally specific and very much dependent on who the people are in the situation. Practical wisdom. So this is another way that we see virtue ethics as a little bit different from the other systems that we've looked at, or the other types of theories that we looked at, is we see this focus on practical wisdom. Aristotle thought that practical wisdom, or phronesis, is essential for moral excellence. He thought that it allows us to deliberate well about what's good and beneficial in life. Practical wisdom requires experience, it requires emotional sensitivity, and it requires sound reasoning to guide us to virtuous action. So, when we do our analysis of what we should do in a specific situation according to Aristotelian virtue ethics, we have to remember that the last step of our analysis is this application of practical wisdom. So let's put it all together. Moral action combines our virtue rules, moral wisdom, and practical wisdom. And by combining all of those things, we will be able to determine what is the right action. So the right action is done knowingly, for its own sake, from a virtuous disposition, and in a fitting way. The Golden Mean teaches that virtues lie in balance. Living well means cultivating habits of reason, emotion, and action that align with moral excellence. Through practice and reflection, we achieve harmony and human flourishing, or eudaimonia. Here are some reflection questions that help us to apply Aristotle's ideas to real-life moral choices. So think about how balance and practical wisdom operate in your own decisions. What does Aristotle mean when he says virtue is relative to us? How does practical wisdom help us to find the mean? Can you think of a situation where you aimed for balance between extremes? Why is virtue about excellence and not moderation? All right, y'all, that's all for now. If you would like to watch more videos about virtue ethics, other forms of ethics, or philosophy, check out the videos posted on our channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.